Well, we are coming to the end. Today we're going to look at chapter 15, so a mini lecture, 5 main things. Chapter 15, the main section deals with figures that would be called brides of death. So one of the heroic paths for women is to become the wife of a hero or the mother of a hero, but another path is to be a bride of death. In other words, an unmarried woman who goes to her death instead of getting married, right? So women's powers of reproduction, right, are viewed as key to who they are, and so they either use those properly, they get married, have kids, or they die before that. This type of figure is big in the Roman Catholic Church, right, where you've got a whole slew of women saints whose characterization is virgin and martyr. In other words, they died before or instead of getting married. The chapter looks at looks at Iphigenia, whom we've seen before, right? She's the daughter of Agamemnon who gets sacrificed so that the Greek fleet can go to Troy. Euripides wrote 2 plays that we have both of them about Iphigenia. One is a rescue play called the Iphigenia among the Taurians, and then one of his final plays is called the Iphigenia at Aulis, which deals with her sacrifice at Aulis to get the winds. And the remarkable thing about that particular play is that Iphigenia gets this monologue about why she has decided to accept her own sacrifice so that the Greeks can go to Troy. She basically argues these young men are going to fight, many of them are going to die, they're sacrificing for their country, I too need to do that. And Euripides only won first prize 4 times in his life, well, 3 times in his life, but 4 times total. And this was this play, Iphigenia at Aulis, was part of the winning thing that was produced after his death. And it's at the end of the Peloponnesian War, but it's basically this big patriotic sort of thing. Polyxena is a Trojan princess who is sacrificed to Achilles' ghost when Troy is taken, and she willingly goes to that faith, right? So she's brave in the face of death is what we mainly get. And then, of course, Antigone, the main character in Sophocles' play, Antigone shows bravery in defying the state because she's answering to a higher calling, but that costs her life. And so she, too, is a bride of death. She chooses death over wedding. Sophocles' Antigone, deals with big questions, right? This is a good play to look at, and it's good that we have most of the play here. What is right? Is Antigone right? So Antigone is arguing for the personal. Her 2 brothers killed each other in this war. One was fighting for Thebes, the other was fighting against Thebes, but they're both dead. The one who was fighting for Thebes is going to get a hero's burial. The other is not going to get buried, and she feels this is not right. And then, of course, is determined to bury the brother who attacked the city. It's also a battle between human and divine law. Antigone says that she is acting under divine law, that it is not right to leave a dead body unburied. There's something inhuman about it. It's just terrible. And Creon, her uncle, who represents the state, he's the king, he is the one who has said, no one's going to bury this body. We're going to show traitors like this guy, this is what happens. So technically, the law is on his side because he is the law, but is there a higher law? The play asked that question. The scholarship looks at a work by Gail Carragher, and the thing that we have here are 5 ingredients in the heroine's journey. So this is like looking at quest heroes, but quest heroines. And so in the heroine's journey, what are those 5 characteristics? I did want for this just to read the opening from the selection. Here is the hero's journey in one pithy sentence. So the hero's journey. Increasingly isolated protagonist stamps around, prodding evil with pointy bits, eventually fatally prods baddie, gains glory and honor. So isolated hero fighting against the baddies. Here is the heroine's journey in one pithy sentence. Increasingly networked protagonist strides around with good friends, prodding them and others onto victory together. So the female heroine pattern is we're going to work as a network. We're going to do this together. The hero is doing this by himself, right? So that's a good way to put it. And Carragher clearly has some fun with her characterization. The comparison section deals with a figure named Thecla. And the selection comes from the Acts of Paul and Thecla. So who is Thecla? Thecla may or may not have existed, but she was a woman in Asia Minor who listened to Paul, St. Paul, the St. Paul from the epistles of Paul in the Bible, when he was preaching, and basically decided that she wanted to do that as well. She wanted to basically spread the gospel, spread the good news. She's engaged to be married. She basically decides to throw that aside, and then there are attempts to martyr her that sort of go awry. But one of the amazing things in the Acts of Paul and Thecla, though Paul is grateful that she is sort of has accepted the gospel, he clearly has a man's view of things, and it's sort of like, this is a man's job. It's not your job, Thecla. And he's baptizing some people, or he's overseeing some baptism, but somehow she gets left out, and so at one point she just baptizes herself, which again is sort of this remarkable thing, because the society does not give her this authority. She just decides, screw that, I'm doing it anyways. So it's an interesting thing. The Acts of Paul and Thecla are part of the scripture that didn't make it into the New Testament, right? The New Testament, the books of the New Testament were determined in 325 at the Council of Nicaea. Only 4 Gospels. There are dozens of Gospels. Only 4 were picked, and the 4 that we have are the 4 that were picked. Only certain letters, mostly by Paul, were picked. And then the Acts of the Apostles is the only Acts which deals with the followers of Jesus after this crucifixion, when they're spreading the word, right? That's what the Acts deal with. And so the Acts of the Apostles isn't the only Acts. There's also the Acts of Paul and Thecla and other Acts. Those didn't make it into the official Bible. But it does not mean that the work has no authority. It just has no official authority in Christianity. And then the modern, Nachleben section deals with modern film takes on Antigone. And I've not seen either of these films, but both of them sound quite interesting. Jeff Ho did a work called Antigone, Fong. Fong is the word, it means square. So there's like an allusion, a hint towards Tiananmen Square and that thing. But it basically takes the Antigone story, changes the characters' names a little bit, but it's basically that story where you've got protests against an authoritarian regime, such as the Tiananmen Square protests were. And then and Jeff Ho is a Canadian filmmaker, but his family came from Hong Kong, so he does have connections with mainland China. Sophie Daraspe is from Quebec, and she did a work called Antigone. This is an updating of the story. Instead of it being about Antigone herself, it deals with some Muslim Canadians and a similar sort of situation where they're, of course, despised by the community. The officials are not, of course, in favor of this, but they then have to take their own stand against this oppressive state. So it's similar to what Antigone does, right? She does not have the blessings of the state to bury her brother. She does it anyways because she feels and claims that in fact is the right thing to do. That in this case the state is in the wrong, and therefore it is incumbent upon her to take action. So the same sort of thing happens in Deraspe's Antigone. So I hope you've had a pretty good semester. I hope these mini lectures have helped a little bit. Obviously, there's a ton of stuff in these chapters. I can't get to all of it. I can't even get to most of it in these mini lectures, but it does allow you to see me and get a little sense. And of course, you also can see my pugs on occasion. You can even hear this guy snoring. That's Roger. So I hope, at any rate, you've had a good semester, that you've learned some stuff, and good luck to you going forward.